Hi, my name is Michelle and I'm with the Garrett Public Library. I'll be doing the Railroader reading for this week. I'm reading a couple of short stories from the July and August Reader's Digest of this year. The first short story is called A Leap of Faith, and it's by, by Derek Burnett. It was a bright May afternoon along the Maryland coast, and Jonathan Bauer, 51, a technology executive at a hospital, and his 13-year-old daughter Ava were taking full advantage of it. They were driving with the windows down as they headed home on the 1.4-mile-long two-lane Route 90 bridge, which spans the shallow waters of Assawoman Bay. Suddenly, the calm was disturbed by the squeal of tires. Not far ahead of them, a black pickup was skidding from one lane to the other. To the Bauer's horror, it slammed into a concrete barrier, spun like a top, flipped over the SUV directly ahead of them, and came to rest, dangling over the railing of the bridge. Bauer hit the brakes in time to avoid the vehicles in his path, but a BMW sedan that had smashed into the guardrail on the right came sliding backward toward him. He swerved left, but too late. The BMW struck his Volvo's fender before crashing into the vehicle behind him. Bauer stopped the car. "Ava, are you okay?" he asked. She was shaken, but otherwise unhurt. He ran to the BMW. "Are you okay?" he asked the driver. She nodded, too shocked to speak. And then the shriek. It came from the pickup, which had come to rest on its right side. The rear passenger compartment and truck bed hung out past the guardrail, 30 or more feet above the waters of the bay. The driver's door flung open and a man climbed out. He dropped to the ground, then sprinted to the railing. Bauer ran up beside him. The man pointed down, saying something in Spanish. In the water was a car seat. Bobbing next to it, a girl, about 2 years old. Pink polka-dotted dress, brown hair, brown eyes, terrified, floating on her back, kicking and splashing and screaming. From around the truck, more screaming from its other passengers who had gotten clear of the wreck and were looking down into the water. Matters quickly went from bad to frightening when the toddler rolled over onto her stomach. Bauer waited for the pickup driver to do something, but he didn't budge. Maybe he was in shock. "Ava," Bauer yelled, stooping to remove his shoes, "stay by the car." He held no illusions about his chances jumping from this height into such shallow water. 4 feet of depth was the most he could hope for. He'd gotten his boat stuck here a time or two. And were there rocks this close to the concrete pillar of the bridge? He would soon find out. He climbed onto the railing and executed the most painless belly flop he could muster. A moment later, he was bouncing off the sandy bottom, unhurt. The little girl was less than 10 feet away. Bauer swam to her in a few quick strokes and lifted her out of the water. Mouth half open, eyes nearly closed, not breathing. Standing, he laid her against his shoulder and whacked at her back with the flat of his hand. "Come on, come on." And then a retching sound as ocean water came streaming from her mouth, but still no breath. Another whack on the back and another retch, followed by a gasp, and then the beautiful sensation of little fingers gripping him around the neck. Her eyes were open now, focused on him. He pulled her close, hugging her to shield her from the cold. A moment later, a family on a pontoon boat pulled up and hauled Bauer and the little girl aboard. They motored to a boat ramp where an ambulance waited. Minutes later, the girl was en route to Johns Hopkins in a helicopter, and Bauer was hugging his own daughter next to their banged-up car on the bridge. The toddler suffered a broken shoulder, but was otherwise uninjured. Ava Bauer was so inspired by her father's actions that 4 months later she became a cadet firefighter so that she too could save lives. "That girl is going to live a whole life because of him," she says. "It's incredible." And that was the end of the first short story. The second short story that I'm going to read is a piece that is entitled How to Learn from Your Regrets. If you never pine for a different past, you'll stay trapped in a cycle of mistakes. And this is by Arthur C. Brooks. Regrets, I've had a few. But then again, too few to mention, Frank Sinatra crooned in his 1969 hit, My Way. The song's idea is seductive. that anyone can just declare that what's done is done and move on. Some take the declaration a step further and claim that they have no regrets at all, even to the point of tattooing it on their bodies. Whether an inspiration or an actual philosophy, no regrets suggests that life can and should be lived without looking through the rearview mirror. Much easier said than done, though. In 2020, author Daniel H. Pink launched the World Regret Survey, the largest survey on the topic ever undertaken. With his research team, Pink asked more than 15,000 people in 105 countries, how often do you look back on your life and wish you had done things differently? 82% said regret is at least an occasional part of their life. Roughly 21% said they feel regret all the time, and only a mere 1% said they never feel regret. If you are one of the no regrets school of life, you might think that all this regret is a recipe for unhappiness, but that isn't the case. True, letting yourself be overwhelmed by regret is indeed bad for you. But going to the other extreme may be even worse. To extinguish your regrets doesn't free you from shame or sorrow. It consigns you to make the same mistakes over and over again and again. To truly get over our guilt requires that we put regret in its proper place. As uncomfortable as it is, regret is an amazing cognitive feat. It requires that you go back to a past scenario, imagine that you acted differently to change it, and with that new scenario in mind, arrive at a different present, and then compare that fictional present with the one you are experiencing in reality. For example, if today your relationship with your partner has soured, your regret might mentally take you back to last year. You would remember your own pettiness and irritability, and then imagine yourself showing more patience, being kind instead of hurtful at key moments. Then you would fast forward to today and see how your relationship could be flourishing instead of languishing. Not all regrets are the same, of course. Pink says they come in 4 basic varieties, and an instance of regret may involve just one or a combination. Wishing you'd been kinder to your partner is an example of a connection regret, in which you lament behavior that harmed an important relationship, such as spoiling a romance or neglecting your bond with relatives before they died. Many connection regrets overlap with moral regrets, which can come about after you violate your own values. For example, you may pride yourself on being a loving person and thus regret not living up to this image in the relationship you harmed. Moral regrets can also involve just yourself. Maybe you regret not living up to your commitment to your health when you ate a whole pizza or skipped the gym. Pink's other 2 categories of regrets involve life choices. Foundation regrets are those in which you did something that affected the course of your life in a way you don't like. A classic example is wishing you had stayed in school. Meanwhile, boldness regrets are the opposite. They're all about inaction and foregone opportunities. This is what you feel when you kick yourself for not taking a chance, as in wishing you had just gone up to that attractive person and introduced yourself. Analyzed and unmanaged, any variety of regret can be poison for your well-being. Regret is implicated in depression and anxiety, and excessive regret can adversely affect your hormones and your immune system. For me, it's an anathema to sleep. I am not alone in this. In 2013, researchers asked one group of participants in an experiment to describe your most burdensome regret right before going to bed. This group took 61% longer to get to sleep than a group told to think about just a typical day. But regret doesn't have to be left unmanaged. The trick is not to banish the bad feeling, it's to acknowledge it and use it for learning and improvement. Instead of letting the specter of your failed relationship make you miserable by simply wishing it had turned out differently, you can be honest with yourself about what went wrong, and you use that knowledge to enjoy better relationships in the future. Regrets benefits don't come to us by chance. We have to seek them out on purpose to improve ourselves. Here are 3 steps you can take the next time you find yourself contemplating your past missteps. Kill the ghost. People often say their regrets haunt them. This suggests that regret is like a ghost, not entirely clear but always intimidating. Bring your ghost out of the shadows by making a list of your regrets. Write down why each one still bothers you and its lingering bad effects. Be honest without catastrophizing. For example, note that you hurt a friend's feelings through your own fault, but also that this almost certainly didn't ruin the person's life. You will find that a list is a lot less frightening than a ghost. Another step is to forgive yourself. After you make a mistake, life moves on, but sometimes you just can't stop kicking yourself. I think we've all done that. Perhaps you dropped out of school decades ago and are constantly calculating today how much more money you would be making had you pressed on to graduation. In other words, you have voluntarily chosen a life sentence for a poor decision you made in the past. Your regret can teach you to be smarter if you let it. Now is the time to appeal that verdict. Maybe you'd be making more today, but adding self-loathing to the dollar penalty makes no sense. Resolve to commute your emotional sentence with a simple verbal declaration. I make amends with myself and will not waste another minute of my life reliving a decision that cannot be changed. Good advice. Another step, collect your diploma. Regret is like a school run by human nature. If you never experienced regret, you would keep repeating the same behaviors that led you to miss opportunities and wreck relationships in the past. Your regret can teach you to become smarter and more successful if you let it. In your list of regrets, also note how you want to change your behavior and outline your resolutions going forward. Next, list all the ways that you can invest in your own skills and improvement right now, and just simply get started. Regrets may hurt, but obsessing over them is destructive. Shunning them, or trying to live without them, is a lost opportunity to grow. Life is a journey full of pleasure and pain. To live it well and fully means learning from every bit of it, including the mistakes, and moving forward. And that was the end of that second piece. I hope everyone's having a good week, and I will see you again soon.